call to order this meeting of the Farmington School Board. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks, everyone. Our first item on the agenda, as always, is approval of the agenda. The agenda was published, I think, on Wednesday last week. Everyone should have had a chance to take a look. Are there any items to add or questions about the agenda? If not, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move. Second.
Motion by Doyle, second by DeWilde. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have an agenda, and our first item on that agenda is good news and superintendent update for you.
Yeah,
Mr. Burke.
Thanks, Chair Christensen, members of the board, members of the community. Got a number of things that we're pretty excited about. Well, the first one is this week is Paraprofessional Week. So we have lots of really cool events to celebrate our paraprofessionals throughout the district. And sometimes, those are those positions that go unnoticed, right? They're the ones that are working one-on-one with kids or one-on-two with kids, and we wouldn't really be able to do the things that we want to do to support each and every one of our learners without the work that they do. They are truly integral to our day-to-day operations. So I know our buildings are pretty excited and have lots of different things going on throughout the week to celebrate and to thank that group of individuals. Another little cool celebration that's going on in one of our middle schools this week at Bachman, they're going to have a sixth grade halfway celebration. You might be thinking halfway of what? Halfway of the school year? Actually, no. This Wednesday, they're going to recognize and celebrate their sixth graders for hitting the milestone of the halfway point in their K through 12 experience. So they have a bunch of different activities that they're going to have planned throughout the day in their classrooms, recognizing that milestone. Kind of cool when you think about it. So if you have a sixth grader, it's at that tipping point where it's getting closer now to graduation than it was when they entered the system.
I'm just surprised she hasn't mentioned it at home yet.
Well, she might not even remember it. So, but that day when it gets there, I know that the activities they're going to have are going to be super exciting. I'm sure she'll talk about it when she gets back. So, I shared this, I believe, with our community board at last superintendent update, but the FHS debate team qualified for the state tournament, and they had a really successful run there. So the team of Riley Tui and Abby Nelson brought home Farmington's first ever semifinal trophy with a preliminary record of 4-1. They defeated teams from St. Paul Central, Roseville, Thomas Edison, and Edina. They won their quarterfinal debate against one of the teams from Egan, but unfortunately lost their semifinal to the other team from Egan. This was Riley's second appearance at the state debate tournament and Abby's first. They were also named All-State in the policy debate division. And then this past weekend, they had the national qualifying tournament and they qualified for the national tournament. They're the first Farmington team to do that. So that tournament is being held, I believe, in Arizona. Not exactly sure on the dates, but considering our weather, that's going to be an awesome place to be for any sort of national tournament. Then the sophomore team of Gavin Andrews and Claire Koros, they also qualified. They cleared the quarterfinals with a preliminary record of 3-2. They defeated a team from Roseville, St. Croix Prep, and St. Paul Central. And then they lost to the section champion team from Egan. This was their first appearance in the state meet. And then they also had Owen Chamberlain, who was making his second appearance, and he was the alternate for both teams, just in case one of the members wasn't able to do that. I know Mr. Pickens, when he came and shared his high school update, he mentioned Friendly Presence, one of the things that they were trying to get going in the building. That is up and running at FHS. They currently have 24 community members and parents volunteering at FHS to open doors in the morning, help in the lunchroom, plan appreciation events, and much more. I don't think Dodge and Bachman talked about it, but they're in the process of getting that up and running in each of their building as well. If anybody is interested in getting any more information on how they can be involved in those really cool interactions with our learners, contact Mr. Pickens at the high school, Mr. Nelson at Dodge, or Mr. Sage at Bachman. If you remember, probably late in the fall, one of our Bachman educators Ms. Tekal was named 917 Inclusive Educator. We also had a second one. I think I mentioned at the time we had another one coming, but they weren't able to get that. Well, that was awarded last week to Miss Jenny Harrison, a 5th grade teacher at Aiken Road Elementary. So just another cool way that our staff partner with the 917 programs that are housed in our buildings and really allowing those learners to come into their spaces and be a part of all the experiences that our home kids have. Just a quick budget update. So if you were paying attention, the governor started to slowly release his budget. He is required by statute to have the whole thing released by, I believe, the 24th. So last week was the education part of things. The key components of that is a formula of increase of 4% next year, 2% the following year, and then try to tie that to inflation beginning in FY26. Cover the special ed cross subsidy by 50%, increase the multilingual learner aid by 25%. Heard a lot about universal meals, so back to kind of the way things were during pandemic when the meals are covered by the state, and then additional funding for school support personnel, mental health supports. We're not exactly sure what all this means for our district. We're still waiting on some runs from MDE. They typically take these proposals and they provide pretty detailed information to districts about exactly what this means from a revenue standpoint. We've done a little bit of modeling. What I can tell you is this: if the biggest thing that we continue to need to have happen, not only for our district but across the state, is to have our liabilities fully covered, and that is a special ed cross subsidy. So even though this is a significant investment, I can tell you right now that we would still be looking at reductions in our district even with this, because the special ed cross subsidy just eats up any of that percent that they put on the student formula. There are other bills floating around out there. I know that there's some bills in the House and in the Senate that have 5% and 5% on the formula, and there's also bills, specifically one in the House that has 100% special ed cross subsidy. So it'll be interesting where things land. We continue to advocate for 100% of the cross subsidy and let the other pieces fall where they may, because that's going to be the biggest thing helping us. Just the last two things: kindergarten registration is open for the 2023-24 school year. If families are looking, hey, where do I get more information on that, visit our webpage and all the information is right there. Or the other they can do is they can contact the elementary building they believe that their learner is going to attend, and they can begin that process as well. And then finally, and I'm not sure if Bree's going to talk about this in her community ed update, but the Community Expo is this Saturday at Farmington High School, and I believe it is 9 a.m. till noon. Correct. So that's all I have for tonight.
You covered that very quickly, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next on the agenda is updates from our student school board representatives. We'll start with you, Emma.
All right, so I'm just gonna gloss over some of the victories in Farmington athletics. So gymnastics finished first in their first ever CAM invite. Wrestling finished third at the Eastview Invitational out of 15 total teams, and 3 Farmington wrestlers were champions of their weight class. For basketball, both the boys and girls teams have been having a successful season, but tonight they're actually having a competition for their fundraiser. So tonight from 4 to 8, so you still have time if you're watching, they're having a competition at the Lakeville Canes. So when you're doing a mobile order or at the register, say that you're with either the boys or girls Farmington basketball team and show your support, and whichever team wins, gets the most fundraising, wins the competition. And then our ski team had another victory at the SSC Invitational. And for other Farmington athletics, just to kind of reiterate, you can follow Tiger Farmington on Instagram and keep an eye out for other athletics and clubs up there. And if you go to following on that Instagram, you can find other individual Instagram accounts for those clubs and activities. And they're mostly manager and student-led. So they have some unique graphics and fun perspectives on there. And for events this week, we have a wellness drive, which is held by the Youth Service Advisory Council. The drive starts today and goes till Thursday, the 26th, and it's made possible by Backpack Project MN. and they gather wellness items and distribute them out to displaced Minnesotans in the Twin Cities. And all items can be donated to a designated box at the Farmington High School front entrance. And donations can range from winter gear to toiletries to miscellaneous wellness items. And it's really important, especially in this winter season. For Farmington's Little Shop of Horrors musical, there were auditions for a student director, and this has already been held, and it's a really exciting opportunity for students to have a leadership role in the theater program. For the dance solo, they're still having auditions available, and so you can sign up for that. That'll be this Wednesday, and they're looking for a boy and a girl to dance a solo to Somewhere Green for that musical. So that's a really fun opportunity. So if you're watching, sign up for it, and I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome, thank you. So last week at Farmington High School, we started the registration process for the 23-24 school year. On Wednesday, there was a course fair. So it's really similar to the activities fair, but there were groups from like the different departments around our school. So there's remember the art department was there, as well as social studies. They didn't have quite as much candy as they do at the activities fair, but it was still pretty interesting to learn about those courses, especially some of the new ones that they're offering, which I'll get into in a moment. But they also brought some students in from our specialty programs like MinCap. So that's a program that happens off campus where they can specialize in, let's say, different pathways like maybe business or education, or kind of what they think they want to do if they know starting their junior or senior year or going into that year. So we have a lot of new courses. If you remember when Mr. Pickens came in and he shared about a lot of these new classes that they're interested in, or that he was proposing, and a lot of kids are really interested in those classes. One that I've heard a lot of good talk about is that Elements of Science Fiction class, where you can it's a science and English elective, so you kind of get to learn about, I don't know, it seems really interesting, and a lot of people seem to share that same excitement. I know it's discussed in a lot of the classes that I've been in. And then they're starting something new with online courses, so as long as there's interest from the students, they will go on with a lot of those required classes and also some electives. So if you are struggling to figure out how you can get your math class in there, then you can make it work with an online class. So it's really great to see that flexibility that they're allowing for us. Student Council, there's quite a few things going on, with next week being the start of Winter Week. So the Winter Carnival that I've been talking about for the past few meetings, that time has been changed. Instead of 2 to 8, it is now 2 to 6 p.m. So 2 to 6 p.m., February 4th, so 2 Saturdays from now, will be the Winter Carnival. A lot of fun and games. We hope everyone can come and participate. There will be a lot of groups there. We're really excited for how it's going to go. Also, there's been a lot of advertisement for Winter Week, such as posters, flyers all around the school. And then each day, council will be providing a little digital event for students to participate in. Like, for example, on Thursday, it's also Groundhog's Day, so we're going to be doing some groundhog trivia. So now's a good time to start setting up on that if you want to participate. And then we also have our teacher royalty competition, which we've already got some pretty good, there's some people in the lead right now. It's really nice to see the student body coming in to see which teachers they want to get pied, whether for good or bad, whatever their motivation is. So it's really nice, and all those funds are going to Pennies for Patients, so we're really glad we can help out with that. And then I'd like to give a shout out to our awesome weekly Tiger News program. The students who sign up for this class manage it, they're really great about what they do, and they're truly dedicated to finding news that students find relevant and interesting, while also making sure to share helpful information. And specifically for council, they're always allowing us to make an appearance on the show, whether it's to share news about Winter Week or just different events that we might be throwing along in the school. So it's really great to have that connection between our staff and students and the other student groups. And then finally, last week and this week, kind of combined with this days off of school, is World Language Week at FHS. And each day, Mr. Pickens is posting a daily language-related trivia. So there's a language app of the day, an international link about language, or a culture for the day. There's also a trivia, and if someone were to achieve 100% on the trivia, they have a chance to win a prize. There's also some nice bulletin boards. Emma helped put up one of them that are on the second floor that kind of share a little bit more about those global languages.
That's great. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Kennedy. Lots going on at the school. That's actually a a whole lot more, like bullet lists. I don't know how many times you scrolled up and down, but that's a lot of activities and a lot of great stuff going on over at the high school. So thanks for sharing that update. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine business items that can be acted upon with one motion. If any board member wishes to discuss an item, they may request it be pulled from the consent agenda and it will be acted upon separately. Does anyone have an item they would wish to discuss? Seeing none, can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Simmons, second by Doyle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. On to reports and communications. Our first item is the Aiken Road Elementary Loading Dock Project. Dan?
All right, good evening, Chair Christensen, member of the board, community, sparse. Here this evening to present kind of an initial run-through of a potential project at Aiken Road Elementary, as it says in the title, for a loading dock. Before jumping into this, maybe just a little bit more about general kind of projects, larger projects here in the district. To be quite honest, these will probably be a couple of the last larger projects that we will have for a while. I say that for a couple of reasons. One is most of our funding mechanisms that we utilize to kind of try to tackle some of these projects are either our LTFM, our long-term facilities maintenance budgets, and historically for the past, 5, 6, well, going on 7 years now, our 2015 bond dollars. Our bond dollars are dwindling. We will hopefully utilize the remainder of those bond dollars as part of this project. And then after that, we will be left primarily with just LTFM dollars, which we utilize to kind of try to keep our buildings up to speed, but it doesn't allow for a whole lot of flexibility. There's not a lot of discretionary dollars that are available there to tackle these larger projects. So we do what we can. We try to keep everything as tip-top shape as much as possible, address those emergencies that we have. But to be quite honest, going forward, these larger projects, barring something, voter approved in the future at some point, will start to take a pretty significant drop off, so to speak. So that being said, this Aiken Road loading dock, I'm calling it a kind of a reconfiguration. I'm not going to read through all of this piece here, but just some background for all practical purposes. Our loading docks in most of our buildings, I know some board members were talking about buildings and some changes we've had in the district in terms of the number of buildings over the last 20 years or so. When most of our buildings were built, our loading docks are not particularly configured to accommodate the expectations that have developed over time in terms of separation of waste. So for example, we have trash. When some of our buildings were built, that's all we had was trash. Everything went in the trash. Then it went trash and then recycling. And then now it's trash and recycling and organic waste. We don't have the lineal footage on our loading docks to accommodate, in most cases, 3 dumpsters. And Aiken Road is probably our most challenging. It's a very small loading dock area, and it has required our custodial staff to kind of do a lot of literally going out and pushing wheeled containers around in the parking lot in order to access them. That has proved challenging from an ergonomic and kind of just worker safety standpoint. As well as, to be quite frank, the wind gets a hold of those things and decides to send them flying through the parking lot and crashing into people's cars. So we're trying to avoid that as well. So because of those reasons, we've been trying to figure this out for a number of years, trying to come up with some solution. How can we possibly reconfigure this? How can we keep it to a manageable and the most minimal cost that we can? And so our architects and engineers, we've been going back and forth on this for a while, and obviously a number of solutions, but it always comes down to how much money do you have to try to throw at a problem. And so what we've come up with, we think is the best solution for this is to design an above-ground, basically an elevated platform loading dock. So basically a steel type of a subframe structure, and then a grated, kind of a fiberglass grate type of a platform on top. Basically, this is what Amazon uses in many of their distribution centers. We think it's the most cost-effective, primarily because it involves the least amount of earthwork. Anytime you start digging holes and having to excavate, with a lot of our very poor soil around here, it gets expensive in a hurry. So by taking this type of approach, you can see there on that particular diagram, there are some pilings that would go in, and then everything would get anchored to that. So there's very minimal excavation, and it's all suspended or elevated above grade. Gives us the linear footage that we need. There are some other tricky parts with this as well, because we need to maintain our existing loading dock area for our large trucks, delivery trucks that come in. And also continue to maintain a pedestrian walkway that gets up to the loading dock that is pretty heavily used right now by staff at Aiken Road as well. So we think this accomplishes that. And jump down to some of the budget and timeline aspects of this. So the current budget estimate, this would be a total project cost is around $230,000. As I've said before, we try our very best to be for these to be conservative numbers, and knock on wood, historically, we've typically come in at or under those numbers. From a funding standpoint, as I mentioned before, we are really getting down to the kind of the last remaining funds in our 2015 bond fund right now. We're sitting at right around that $160,000 left. And anything left in this would be utilized to finish this up, as well as we have some capital dollars in the buildings and grounds that would use to kind of finish that off. We can't use LTFM dollars for a project like this because this is a new project. LTFM dollars are basically utilized to maintain or fix or repair existing, and this would not fit into that category. So we've got to find another way to use dollars from a different funding source for this. That's another one of the reasons why we really had to come up with some way to come up with a highly cost-effective means by which to try to tackle this, because we don't have funds of that nature available. Timelines and next steps. So the intent would be our engineers and architects are working on nailing down just a few of the details within our engineering group, as well as the city of Farmington and Dakota Electric. There's the one piece that's a little bit of a caveat to this, is where this particular loading dock and the excavation would need to take place. Some of our major fiber optic, electrical, and gas lines are also in that vicinity. That's another reason why this particular design we thought was best, because it minimizes the excavation. And we think we're good with all of that. Dakota Electric was just reviewing how close we are to one of their transformers, but we think we have a solution for that as well. So our plan right now is that we believe we can proceed with the design as currently noted. So the intent would be to come back to the board in February at the work session to request permission to take this project out for bid, with the intent of getting those bids back in March, coming back to the board in March to hopefully, once again, if bids are kind of on track budget-wise, to seek approval for those bids, with the long-term goal of having this wrapped up prior to school starting next fall. Is kind of the goal with that. So I don't know if people have any questions. Not a super thrilling thing to talk about, loading docks and dumpster placement, but
Definitely not as
it is
sexy
what
as
it is.
windows and tennis courts.
No, it's not. It's not. So,
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Is there any requirements, I'm just looking at the drawing that you put up.
Yep.
For any ADA accessibility? It looks like there's some stairs that are going in for, for our employees to use, but are there any
Being that, so in this case, we wouldn't have to because we have other ADA doors.
Okay.
So to be honest, though, it was a question that came up just out of a convenience aspect of things from loading and unloading. To put a ramp in here because of the grade requirements that you have to have would require us to have about an 80-foot ramp.
Okay.
So that then becomes very cost prohibitive.
Let's take it all the way to
So
195.
pretty much, yeah, we'd be going almost all the way out to the curb on the bus corral loop. So it was asked, the only workaround to that is to then have a platform in the middle. So it was something staff talked about because there are some advantages to having ramped access.
Yep.
But most staff don't necessarily use this, but it does get used, but it would not be ADA accessible for that. Yeah, so good question.
And Dan, can you talk to us just a little bit more about why we can't use the LTFM dollars? I know you kind of summarized it, but when you talk about kind of repairing something,
Yep.
is it because this is
This would
brand new
be classified as
construction?
new construction.
So
So-
even though it's not considered a modification to our existing one because it's in a totally different, and
Correct.
it's just adding
Yep.
on, basically.
Correct. We could make repairs, so on and so forth, to the existing, but in terms of actual new construction like this, it wouldn't qualify.
You have to put new footings in.
We'd have to, I mean, we're basically creating a new structure.
Okay.
So, yeah, we could do like concrete repair work, on the loading dock and things like that. That would be considered, legitimate expenditure. But when you're talking about actual new construction,
Then it won't.
yeah, this one wouldn't fly.
And can you, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can you tell us just a little bit more too about prioritization and how this kind of rose to the top? I understand with issues that you called out, certainly blowing into parked vehicles and loading and ergonomic challenges for custodial staff, but I think I'm just more looking for kind of big picture,
Yep.
this in relation to other projects that we have planned, especially since we will have to use the capital, sorry, the non-LTFM dollars, the buildings and grounds capital dollars.
So, yep, so I think kind of twofold. So one, it's been a problematic area that we've had to address. I mean, so I'll just be honest, we have had to expend out of, district funds to make repairs to vehicles that have been damaged. Other concerns, work comp types of issues with the current situation that we have. With people actually having to carry waste downstairs and then lift it up over into trash receptacles. And then the other piece to this is what are our legitimate funding sources for this? And because we can't use LTFM dollars, if we don't utilize what we have for bond and capital dollars right now, couldn't tell you when this will ever get done.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be looking at another, not until another bond opportunity in order to be able to do something like that. So that's where these pieces of bond and capital and LTFM dollars get a little bit tricky. We've done a lot of juggling with those funds here the last few years to try to accomplish those things that, okay, we've deemed this to be an important piece. How do we try to figure out a way to make this happen? It is a bit of a shell game, and sometimes based upon the nature of the funding source, are there other potential items that, there's always things that we can do. I mean, day to day, week to week, there's always something that crops up that we're gonna need to tackle. Knock on wood, most of those items we've been able to tackle with LTFM dollars. My guess is there will come a time in the next 5 years where we may have something that may present some challenges just based upon the dollar figure. It's another thing I think that's maybe been hinted at in some of the legislative, aspects of bills is LTFM funding. We run a lot of square footage and there's a lot to maintain, and if you don't really have a very good funding mechanism by which to do that, other than to lean on your taxpayers for voter-approved bonds, it is a challenge. And I don't think it's the best way, but it is what it is.
Yeah, thanks for talking us through that and adding more information. Appreciate it. That's all I had.
Anything else? All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Next up is Community Education Annual Report. Bree?
My visual aid good there, or do you want me to bring it up?
I wanted you to carry it over
I
your
mean, it
head.
doesn't matter.
Mardi Gras coming up?
I made it look easy, right?
Actually, that's a month out, probably a little soon.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Chair Christensen, I'm Bree Ossoff, I'm the Director of Community Ed, and I brought with me my lovely visual aid that my team decided to put together. So these pony beads represent all the participants we had in the fiscal year 21-22. So I'm here to give my report on my fiscal year 21-22. Normally I do it in December. I'm kind of glad I'm doing it a little bit later. I was sick in December, but so many of you are new that it's going to be great to give this report for you all to see also. It's not unique users, but it's everybody who's registered for something. And if I had to calculate out the unique users, it would be very weird. I don't have multicolored pony beads. So I'm going to go through and tell you about the different levels so you can see what they are. So the first level on the bottom here, this yellow level, this is our youth level. So this is our youth enrichment level. This is our we have a big competitive cheer team. We have a big gymnastics program, which is called Twist and Tumble, which is gymnastics and parkour, and we have Tiger Serve. So of all of those organizations, there were about 5,255 participants, which is really exciting. One of the things I'd like to say, and I have to remember as I was preparing for this, the start of the fiscal year 21-22, still under COVID restrictions. So just to put that in your perspective, through COVID, my youth team and the youth programming has done exceptionally well. They've adapted, they've changed, they've continued to grow, which is a huge, like the youth were excited to come back and excited to get back into things. I think we were also really stressed being safe and trying to keep and stay all of those restrictions that we had to do and keep our children safe. And it was a really good place for parents to find outlets for their kids where they could still provide those safe opportunities. One of the things I want to highlight is our cheer team, our JV and varsity team earned bids to nationals last year, and our JV team actually placed. So they placed in the top 3, which is incredibly good. A bunch of those participants also got invited this year nationals to participate in a national competition. So I think there were about 6 of them who were selected to participate in with girls from all over the country, which is very, very exciting to have a team succeed in that way. So that's great. The next level I want to highlight is my purple level, and this is my adult level. So we had 3,111 participants in our adult programming. When I'm talking about adult programming, I'm talking about adult basic education, which is our GED program and our English as a second language program. And we don't do any, we can, but we don't do any citizenship classes. We just don't have the interest yet. But the one thing we've started is a para program. So it's teaching people how to start becoming paras, and then also becoming, we also have one to become CNAs. So after they go through English language programs, we go and try to help them be CNAs and paras, things like that. We're in a consortium, so we are in a consortium with Northfield. So we're the fiscal agent, but the teachers are technically under our contract, but we have classes in Northfield and classes in Farmington, and we kind of partner in those spaces and stuff like that. We do that because by ourselves, we can't afford to pay for one person to be in charge of this program, but together we can pool our resources and we can pool so that our teachers are able to split, get more hours and things like that. And we actually share, our coordinator is also Lakeville's coordinator. So they're on their own, but she's half-time with us and half-time with Lakeville. So it's we're small, but growing. That program is dependent on job and the job market. So there are more participants, the higher the unemployment rate, and less participants, the lower the unemployment rate. So right now, that program is smaller than it has been in previous years. The next level, my smallest level, and this is one that surprised me, is our preschool programming and our childcare programming. So We Tigers, Stepping Stones, and Kid Connection. And I was actually surprised it was the smallest level, but this level is actually the level most impacted by COVID. So it's most impacted by COVID, where preschool programs, we shut down 2 classrooms, and We Tigers is also slightly smaller. I think we shut down 3 or 4 classes than we've been in years pre-COVID. People are starting to come back, but it's slow. And the other problem we're having, like I could have opened an additional Stepping Stones classroom this year, it's staffing. So you can't find the staff to work it. In order to have that classroom, I need 4 staff. And so it's one of those where we're impacted both staffing and both people are doing it themselves, are still a little bit leery about getting those younger kids out who actually, when you think about our preschoolers, none of them have known a world if they're 3 pre-COVID. So parents who have 3-year-olds had them at the beginning of COVID and at the height of the scare. And so you see a lot more holding on tight and a little bit more leery about getting them out. But you also see that parent that's excited and it's like, take my kid. So the other program is Kid Connection. Kid Connection is, our numbers are cut in half from pre-COVID. And there's a combo of things. We do have waiting lists in all of our afternoon sites still to this date because we can't get staff. So that's one of the biggest impact. You can't find staff for the number of people we have. But the other reason is because of school start time changes. We used to have equal numbers in the morning and evening, and now we have handfuls in the morning as opposed to hundreds of kids. So that is also an impact. 999 kids, so it's still a large amount. I'll get into our budget a little bit later, but this was the biggest budget that was hit during COVID because these workers are the workers who came out and they provided all-day care. So we paid them when our teachers were teaching, and they were providing care for the families that needed it. Tier 1, so we couldn't charge families, and so we weren't taking in any revenue when we were paying for staff. It definitely brought our budget down. Currently, the state is helping to give us grants for childcare to help us fund to give our workers a higher wage. So we did increase their wages over the last 2 years, and that has been helpful to that budget. But this is one of those that took a big hit, and we're slowly building it back up. Blue is aquatics. Aquatics, it's based off of participants. There's 4 different swim sessions per year, so there's 4 different times they can participate. So that might be why the number is a little large. There are, for aquatics, we had 5,585 different registrations for that. This is a great program. It's one that we could increase numbers if we had more pool time, which, I mean, you're competing with high schools, you're competing with your user groups, so it's not possible to get more pool time. And it's also a staffing shortage. I mean, we have 1 person who works in our pool on the board, and if we had more staff, we could have more people. I think this last session, we had over 100 people on the waiting list for swim lessons. So it's one of those things. Lifeguards are hard to come by nowadays, and then lifeguards who want to teach littles how to swim is also hard. So that's one of the things that, I mean, it's going well. It's could have growth, but it also can't have growth, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. The next one is early childhood family education classes. That's our light green. In our light green, we had 1,364 students. And students, we need family groups. So as someone registers, they can register their whole family, So maybe multiple students in a class, might be a parent and child, might be multiple parents. Also, one of the things they expanded is now caregivers can also take the classes. So it used to just be families could take the classes. So your mom, dad, like that's it. And they've expanded it. So grandparents can take the classes. If you have nanny, they can take the classes. If you have a different caregiver, which is great. So we're starting to see some expansion in that because a lot of programming is during the day and not all of our families can participate or come during the day. We have tried to expand and we do have some evening programming this year, not last year, but this coming fiscal year, we've got some Saturday programming starting to in attempts to reach our families where you have two working parents. This is an interesting program too because we also do parent coaching. So it's one of those things where if you ever hear of anyone who's like, I'm really struggling and I just need someone to talk to about my child's like nighttime routine and all of that kind of stuff, one of the best kept secret, even though we try to put it in our catalog and to tell people about it, is the fact that like if a parent is struggling, our educators who do parent coaching will schedule times to meet with you to talk about whatever you need to talk about and are struggling with. They can also do home visits now that COVID is lifted. So if it's something like, in my home, I'm seeing this, like, can you help me figure out? Because sometimes it's what has happening at home. And it's wonderful to have those opportunities. We're seeing more families reach out for those. And we're starting to do more individual coaching. We're trying to pair them up with our preschool programs because we're noticing like sometimes a whole preschool class will struggle with something. And so we're trying to do some coaching on the preschool, like this is your classroom, this is what you're like socially and emotionally your children are struggling with, so this is how we can give you tools as parents. So we're trying to get more out there and doing that. Events, we had 2,576 people at events. Events, we had the Brand Farm Family Fun event, which was where people could go do apple picking. We had educators out teaching about different farm like animals and activities that we could do. We did the Pet Fest, which is a partnership with the city where it's during homecoming. We have a Pet Fest on Wednesday, which people can bring littles. It's got a DJ, dancing, food, glow sticks. It's kind of their version of celebrating homecoming week. And it's right after the parade, so it's kind of like one of those events that can be a whole family thing. We did the Halloween walk, and we converted it to a trunk, so we're outside. It's not really a trunk. Most people don't have cars, but we converted it to outside. All of these events were being brought back too. So we hadn't done that for 2 years prior. So our version of like, how do we make the Halloween, which was an indoor thing where we walked around Dodge, how do we make this something so parents still feel comfortable? Because again, we're talking the beginning of a year where we're under COVID restrictions. So we did it outside. We actually continued it outside this year because we got such a positive response to the outside. People enjoyed it. As long as the weather's nice, people enjoy it. They'd rather be outside, and it just made the event like there's more space. If you attended, your children have more space to run when you're in line, which I thought was awesome. Where when you're in Dodge, you're in line and you're stuck there. So that was one of those things that we decided to keep. The expo, the first year we brought back the expo, a lot less vendors, under 60 vendors. So the expo was smaller, a lot less attending, but we're hoping to continue to grow it. We have a handful more vendors now. We're hoping that more people show up this Saturday for the expo. We're trying to grow it back. I think there's a lot of reasons why you don't see businesses as much. I think we had some business shifts and some business succeed and some business not succeed in our community. And so there's been some shifts in that. And then the other one we did was the Earth Extravaganza. We used to do it with Earth Day in conjunction, and we found that that's a hard time to be outside because the snow's not always off the ground. So we're getting low participant numbers. We tried moving it to May. We still had low participant numbers. So that this year when we went through all of the things that we're going to continue to do, we did take off the Earth Extravaganza. We also took off Brand Family Farm just because it was one of those that with COVID, our budgets, we lost money for the 2 years of COVID, and we lost a lot of money. And so we did some restructuring in our office, and one of those things was we got rid of our events coordinator, and so we had to take some of our events and spread them out to other people. And so we reduced the number of events this year as a result. The last thing I want to highlight technically isn't community ed, but I want to highlight it because I had my youth team worked really hard, and my adult youth team worked really hard at making the ESSER camps go that were, they were in July, so technically this fiscal year, but I want to highlight them. The ESSER camps had 1,574 students participate in 1 month. And it was 15 days of camps, all just day camps. There were 88 camps that ran. It was anywhere from first grade all the way, incoming first graders all the way up to incoming seniors who participated in these camps. And we did it with ESSER 3 funds. So it was a one-time thing. It's not something that's going to happen again. But it was one of those things where we asked our team to dream. Because there's lots of youth enrichment ideas that get pulled in and people want to do, and when we crunch the numbers, they're not affordable to our families. And so we ask people to dream or to go for things that they've always wanted to do. And like the one up here is a Mississippi canoe trip. So we had a couple of trips where they got to canoe the Mississippi in a giant Voyager canoe, which is an awesome partnership. It's just a really expensive partnership. So that was another thing I wanted to highlight. The last thing I want to highlight before we go is this past fiscal year, we lost money drastically. We depleted our fund balance. We went into the hole in our fund balance because of all the staff that we were paying for who we weren't taking income for. Last fiscal year, we got out of that hole, and that's a huge accomplishment for my team. So, do you have any questions?
You seem just a little bit proud of that last point, so thank you very much.
I'm super proud. Like, when Jane was like, our auditors came through and you're out of the hole, I was like, I thought it was going to take us like a couple of years, and so that was really exciting.
Yeah, it's super hard to have this setback when so many things were out of your control. So just commend you and your team, Bree. I know it was not easy. Thanks for all of the other information. I love the visual. Just wondering if as a team, knowing that we do have waiting lists, especially for Kid Connection, and in particular, school age care is a huge gap and need in our community, as with the other ones that you have waiting lists for Stepping Stones and We Tigers. And just wondering if you guys as a team have had a chance to kind of brainstorm any ideas to increase staff recruitment. I know the wage you mentioned is the grants that are supporting a wage increase there. So just wondering what ideas you guys might have for helping to get the staffed in order to grow the programs and therefore.
Yep. So staffing is staffing is hard. And the reason why staffing is hard is one, the wages they're on the lower side for but they're comparable to all other childcare centers. Like childcare as a wage across the board is low. And it's one of those things that I'm glad legislators are starting to talk about it. So there are bills and there are things going through trying to figure out like how to raise the compensation that we get for childcare without putting the impact on families. That's the hardest part. To increase wages right now, it's increasing rates. And so it's like you play a balancing game. The other hard part is we're talking about staff. We're looking for staff who want to work 4 hours in the middle of the day. So we've slowly been recruiting paras, but it's one of those things where it's almost like we have to get them in the door to realize like this is a good way to get 40 hours. In the past, my predecessor and other people were really leery about having people for 40 hours because we're paying benefits. And that was it's more expensive when you're paying benefits, not just in hourly rates. Now you're paying benefits. And at this point in time, we're like, we'll pay benefits. We'll work to get someone the 40 hours if that is acceptable. It's the hardest part of getting them to realize, like, to get someone to want to take 40 when they're used to taking 30 hours and stuff like that. So we have expanded FES. We just had a maternity leave and begged people to come in, and people came in and then they stayed. And so like that's great. That's what we want. So it's slow. It's a hard process. We're trying to figure out, like, how do we pair you with an early childhood family education, like daytime person, like how do we pair you to get you a whole 40 hours? And we've been having some success with that. It's hard when you're going in advertising because you don't advertise like a piecemealed position. And so it's more like we have to get people in the door to make that attractive and stuff like that. And like I said, it's a really hard job to recruit for because it's 4 hours a day in the middle of the day. So they have to, and the other hard part is you have to love kids. And you have to be creative and want to work with them and do all that kind of stuff, because entertaining children after school for 4 hours a day is a very difficult job. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you, Bree.
Bree.
Our next item is an ISD 917 school board update. Member Simmons?
Okay, so everyone has linked the board notes from our meetings on January 10th for the ISD 917 school board meeting. We had a work session, our annual organizational meeting, and our regular meeting that night. Organizational meeting of note, this used to occur in July to align with the previous terms, which ran July to June. That was a long-standing term linked to when school board elections took place in May instead of in November. So we have just updated the procedures for this board to align more effectively with the general elections that occur in November and when board members, regular boards' terms run January to December.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, ran through the continuous improvement plan. They have been working to highlight some of these throughout the district, which are really, really informative. And so if anyone's ever interested in looking at some of these in more depth, this is a big area of focus. And they have some really tangible goals and some demonstrable progress that they are making. It's really, really interesting to see those plans coming to life through the steps that they have broken down, annually, and what they want to do to move the dial in some of these areas. So let me know if you're interested in seeing any of those. Otherwise, as you can see, we have our typical organizational board meeting where we elected officers, approved our calendar for the year, are adjusting the start time slightly, pushing that back to 4:45, and then had our routine items in our regular meeting. They also, one thing related to what Superintendent Berg talked about with this week being paraprofessional week that I thought was really neat was they did, Dr. Favor, the superintendent for ISD 917, did his own proclamation and resolution for the district. And so recognizing paraprofessionals. And so they had a lot of really cool things planned to recognize their team this week too. So yeah, that's all I have.
Any questions or comments from anybody? All right. With that ends our reports and communications. Can I get a motion to acknowledge receipt of reports and communications?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Doyle, second by Simmons. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Our next item is administrative action. We'll bring Dan back up to the stage. We talked about the Riverview Elementary carpet replacement project at the last meeting, and so it looks like we have an update and a motion to move forward with that.
Yes, thank you, Chair Christensen, members of the board. I won't go back through all of this. This is the same information that was presented at the last board meeting pertaining to the other project referenced earlier about replacing carpet at Riverview Elementary School. Nothing has changed from the last board meeting. other than the fact that we have finalized kind of our bid documents are ready to go, carpet selection, stuff like that is ready to go. So I don't have any additional new information. Just kind of a review, kind of on the budget and phasing side of things, probably the most applicable here. Current budget estimate, you can see there, is just a hair short of $700,000. This project is eligible for LTFM funding. That is a big number when it comes to LTFM, and that is why we elected to phase this project. And because we can phase it, we can actually parse this out over 3 different fiscal years. So that's advantageous to us as a district because it doesn't commit us to significantly large chunks of money in a single project. And quite honestly, if it was that large and we had to do it over one project, we wouldn't be in a position to do that. So the phasing there, beginning this summer, which would incur our FY23 budget, anything prior to July 1st. And then the July and August expenditures there would be on FY24. And then we would pick it back up in phase 2 next June, and then wrap it up before school starts for the following year. I think we talked a little bit before, we would be taking on the product and storing some product on site so that we had everything ready to go for that phase 2. The phase 1 is basically the corridors and open spaces, kind of their locker bay areas, hallways, things of that nature, kind of their pods or house areas. And then the phase 2 would be the classroom spaces in that following year. That just works out better from staging, maintenance, cleaning, all those types of things. It just works out, actual physical installation works out better to break it up that way. And so next steps, I guess, would basically be looking for the board to grant us approval to take that out for bid. For those of you that are new to the process, so we take this out for bid. We publish it locally here in a newspaper. We're legally obligated to do that. I'd be lying if I said that that's a highly productive way by which to publish things. The majority of our work in soliciting bidders is through electronic means, through various clearinghouses throughout the state that our architects and engineers are part of, that we get that information out to. And we also reach out to individuals and so on and so forth if we have previous relationships that we thought were advantageous, to us as well. So we let that sit for about 3 weeks, and then we bring all those, our bids are dropped off at their district office, and we have a public bid opening on that Tuesday. I don't know that I have that up there. I don't think I do. It's a Tuesday before the school board meeting. We accept bids, and then we keep our fingers crossed that everything is favorable. Then we bring that information back to the board. Well, we bring it back to you no matter what, whether it's favorable or not, and make a recommendation as to how to proceed. So it's kind of the process in a nutshell, I guess. So if anyone has any additional questions or? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Just curious, how many bids would you, in your experience? I mean, no, you don't know
Yeah,
for sure. But
it's a good question.
Is it, do you get 50 to sort
No.
through, 3, 10, ballpark?
To be honest, we hope we get more than one.
Okay.
And I say that because we have had some projects where we will only get a single legitimate bidder. That's rare. I would say my guess would be is that we'd have between 3 and 8 for this type of a project. I mean, that's just but it can vary. We can do some projects and we're like, wow, we got 12 bidders. Most of the time it's going to be single digits.
Okay.
Historically. I mean, this is a pretty good sized carpet project, so you're going to be, limiting to mostly commercial, install contractors to tackle a project like this.
Yeah, and if I recall from 2 weeks ago, you said that a lot of the demolition work, you are able to use staff members to do. You don't necessarily have to hire it all out.
So they wouldn't be doing any of the demolition work on the flooring. They would be, we use our staff to do any furniture moving and that type of work. We can usually manage that in-house, not always, but we have been able through the last couple of projects like this, as long as we phase them like this. If we didn't phase it this way, we would struggle, just because it's too much to try to tackle, in one summer with trying to get stuff moved out and then, try to keep things clean and stuff like that. So we can manage if we phase it like this and do it over 2 summers. Otherwise, yes, we would be paying potentially for movers or somebody else to come in and assist with moving furniture, but we've been able to avoid those costs by doing it this way.
So the 5 minutes before the bid opening is a very interesting time to be around. So if you're not doing anything, you can come and watch.
So, yeah, so if yep, feel free.
Does lightning strike or?
No, it's somewhat, I'll just be honest, it's somewhat comical because these contractors, so when we say the bid is due at 1 PM on Tuesday, the day, most of them will be there and they will be finishing their bid pack.
They start looking around at who else is
15 minutes
there
before.
and calling each other.
Yep.
It's just an interesting thing
Yep.
that I would have never thought before until I watched it.
People just drag it, they just drag it out. It's, and the bigger the project, the worse it is, because the more subcontractors that they have and the more subs they're trying to get numbers for, but it is, you would think in today's kind of day and age that wouldn't be the norm, but it is pretty much come stand in the entryway at the high school and
wait.
around 12:30, and you will see people start showing up and frantically filling out their bid packets,
I'm trying to think of a metaphor, but I'm
It's
coming
like
up empty.
Free
It
entertainment.
is wild.
Yep. So,
Just one question. You're saying you're receiving material in June of 2024, no, 2023.
correct, would be this June.
And I remember we talked last time that was, an inflation hedge as much as anything else. Are there any concern? I don't know, where do we store stuff and does that get in the way?
Yep, no,
And are
great.
there, I think about, I don't know, I'm assuming that we won't have a flood issue, damage from stuff that kind of happens. Where do you take this stuff?
Yep, so, nope, that's a great question. So I actually spoke with our head custodian, Tom Underwood, there again this morning. And so he is not concerned at Riverview currently, based upon the space that they have. They actually have a classroom that they do not believe, based upon our current enrollment situation, that they will need again for next year. So, and even if that wasn't the case, I think we would be okay there. They've got a little bit more room than some of our other buildings. So, yes, we try to.
You're set for dry
So
storage. in other words.
we're don't have any concerns at that site. We have it has been a bit more of a challenge at a couple of our middle schools. When we did this before, we had to get very creative with where we could put
Yeah,
pallets
I'm
of
assuming
carpet.
you don't want a big storage container out in the parking lot for
No,
a year.
No, well, and for the reasons you say, it's gonna be inside, it's gonna be, climate controlled, it's going to be, inaccessible to people that don't need access to it, those are good questions and things that we have to be cognizant of if we're gonna keep that amount of stuff on site.
Okay.
I just had another question too. So were there any discussions over something other than carpet replacement? In this day and age, you have kids with allergies, and to Kyle's
Yep.
point, if a flood happened or the fire system went off for some reason and everything got wet and then it's all damaged, what, was that a higher cost or?
It depends, and quite honestly, much of that has to do with what is the existing flooring that's there. And then I will be honest, I ask for a lot of input from building administration, custodial staff. Elementary, there is a difference between elementary and secondary in terms of preferences to flooring types. It's a challenge to get elementary staff to move any direction other than carpet. There's a lot of time spent on floor in elementary, buildings. If you go into an elementary classroom that has something other than carpet, you will oftentimes find that hard surface flooring, whatever it happens to be, some sort of a sheet vinyl. Most of them are sheet vinyls type of a product. They're covered in nothing but rugs because they're looking for a different feel and the nature of the way that the environment is used is a bit different. Secondaries, if you go into those buildings, you'll find just by default now, even there's a lot more hard surface flooring. If you notice back on this phasing diagram, you know, there's a fair amount of stuff on here that isn't being tackled. Now, some of this is because of previous carpeting projects. But on the left-hand side there, you know, those hallways and stuff like that are terrazzo floors. The further you kind of move up, you know, grade level wise, you'll find more hard surface floors in our secondary buildings than you will in our elementary buildings.
Okay. The other question I had was, so I see in the plan was to do the corridors and common spaces first.
Yep.
Then when you go into the classrooms, into that phase, you're going to have to move all that furniture back out into those corridors and common spaces over the new carpet.
Yep.
So is there a plan to protect that so we're not, you know, not necessarily causing any damage to the new carpet that we just replaced, or?
So to be honest, that's our normal process. So every summer, that's what happens. So custodial staff will empty classrooms out into corridors. So they'll move the stuff out into corridors first, go in, clean classrooms, move the furniture back in, and then they'll clean all the corridors, common spaces and stuff like that. Being that our staff is doing it, you know, they would take the same precaution that they would, you know, at any other given point in time in terms of how they move that stuff in and out.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
And in terms of like if the contractor is moving stuff in there, then yes, most of the time they will put some protective, you know, kind of the paperback stuff on there if they're bringing carts and stuff like that down.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was just wondering if there was any
Yep.
thought to, you know, just swapping those and doing the classrooms and offices first and then doing the corridors and common spaces.
Yep, so they actually do it that way because they'll lay out the carpet based upon the way it comes out from the corridors. So literally, and these are all carpet squares.
Oh, okay.
So what they'll do is they'll start in kind of that common space, and then where the carpet squares line up or lay out at the entryway at the doors, they'll make sure that the squares at the door match going into the
Okay,
classrooms.
that makes
So that's
sense.
why they do it that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? Seeing no other questions or comments, can I get a motion to approve administration going out for bid with the Riverview Elementary Carpet Replacement Project as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Simmons, second by Gorman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Go forth and bid. And let us know what our SVP is. I may sneak out to the high school.
I'll let you know.
Now
I
that
kind of want to know too.
you've kind of sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of tailgate. The
It's
whole
just-
board shows up. We're like
It's just different.
eagerly waiting.
All right. Our last item on the agenda is a proposal to amend the school board meeting schedule next year. I happen to notice, say again?
This year.
Sorry, this year. It's funny, at work, I've been talking about last year, all the way back in November. I was talking, 2022 as last year, now I'm in 2023 and I'm calling it next year. I haven't written enough checks. That's how old I am. All right. So we noticed that in April, we had one school board meeting scheduled on, we had two school board meetings scheduled on the 10th, and then 2 weeks later would be the 23rd, right? Or 24th? Is that right? Sorry, I don't have my calendars. In any case, we had our normally, so anyway, the 10th happens to be spring break. There is no school on Monday, April 10th. My guess is it sounds like it's a professional development day for staff and teachers. So, I mean, you're on the clock anyway, but I know that at least one of us is going to be either out of town or on their way back and planning to miss that meeting. Anyway, it dawned on me that in the past, we've had one school board meeting the month of spring break. And when we set the schedule back in July, I don't think we looked forward enough. And we would have made 2 meetings in March and 1 meeting in April. So I think we just, the proposal here is just to amend the schedule so that we would have 2 meetings in.
The meeting in April is also on a non-school day.
That's what yeah, right?
Oh, sorry, did you say that? I missed it.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I had kind of a tangle there, so if anyone else followed it, I appreciate it. In any case, that's simple. It's simply that this change doesn't change the number of meetings. It just brings to 2 into March and 1 into April in alignment with past practice. Are there any questions?
I'll just add too, like we did check with like our HR timelines because April gets to be HR timeline for us and it doesn't impact any of our timelines. So there's, I know we talked about
I
that,
know
but
we've
there's
talked
no
about
issue
different
there.
things that'll have to get voted on,
Yep.
but I don't think you want to be voting on the 10th for things that need to be notified, that close shortly there afterwards, so. Anyway, if there are no further questions or comments? Okay, do you guys have, Kennedy, is it okay if we have 2 meetings in March and 1 in April? All right, thanks. All right, can I get a motion to approve amending the 22-23 school board meeting calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Duelli, second by Doyle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. That ends our administrative actions. Our next item is board remarks, and as always, we'll start with the students. Emma?
I have nothing for today.
Okay. Kennedy?
I would just like to thank, and she's not here right now, she kind of scurried out, but I'd like to thank Bree for everything that she does for Farmington and community education. It's really apparent to how much she cares for not only the kids, which is super important, but also the staff. Just being one of her staff members and seeing the emails that we get sent and things like that. It's just really amazing to have a leader like that. So thank you if you're watching.
Great, thanks, Kennedy. Melissa?
I also wanted to thank Bree. I saw she snuck out as well. It looked like she really worked diligently on getting that budget gap closed, and she seemed to be very passionate about that. So, yeah, if she sees this, big thank you to her on that as well.
Hannah?
I will just put a final plug in for the Community Expo that's already been noted this Saturday. Go check it out, as well as the Winter Carnival. Can't keep saying that enough. I'm really excited to continue to see how especially the student-led things continue to develop and evolve over time. So really cool. Thanks as always for your neat updates. They bring so much to our meeting. And happy Paraprofessionals Week to all of the incredible ones that support our students. We could not do it without them. That's all I have.
Great, thanks. Maggie?
You know, everyone's echoed the things that I was thinking as well. I couldn't be happier with the work that Bree has done, both just as a community member and also as someone who takes advantage of a lot of the programs she puts together. If anyone is going to the expo and you want to offload a couple of little girls, a really good day to also piggyback on the Farmington Dance Team dance clinic at the same time. There are still a few spots available, and it's a big group this year, so it should be a lot of fun.
Okay.
I'm going to echo some of the same sentiments, but thank you, Kennedy, for your updates. I love hearing about the classes that we get added at the high school. I just think it's awesome that every year we're adding new things that the student loves, so I think that's really cool. Thank you to Bree and her whole team for what they do and for bringing the fund balance back, because I know that was a huge thing, and like it was said, she is very passionate and she cares, and you can see that. Thank you to the paras. I know, I'll just say it now as a plug, like if anyone is interested in being a para or working for community ed, we need those people. So definitely look into it if it's something you've ever even thought about. But that's all I have.
Becky?
Agree with everything that has been shared. So thankful for our paras and our great community education programs. I'm excited about Winter Week because I'm always excited to see what my senior is going to leave wearing in the morning. Like, you know, the things that, you know, the dress-up days are fun for a parent to watch when they leave in the morning. And then also, like, excited to, I don't know, take in Farmington athletic events this time of the year when it doesn't always seem like there's a lot else to do. And super thankful that our band shows up to play pep bands at a lot of those events. And so that gives like, you know, my senior to get out and do that. And then they're also opening it up for the middle schoolers to go play pep band with the high school at a couple different events. So one of them is Friday, I believe I heard today. So anyway, thankful for just the opportunities our district offers our community.
That's awesome. Thanks. I won't add a lot. I mean, I think the paraprofessionals in our district are huge. One of my sons gets para support, and I see firsthand. Yeah, I mean, the challenges they deal with and the love that they give the kids in their work. That's awesome. So thank you. All of our paraprofessionals, and as Jacqueline said, if anyone's looking for work, obviously there's those roles available. It's awesome. I also want to give a shout out to parents generally. Because one of my sons is involved in swim, and so on the swim team, we were talking about that before the meeting started, and I've had a pretty I mean, I've coached youth sports through community ed and things like that over the years, but I haven't seen up close the work that the booster clubs do for the swim team. But I mean, I know that that's replicated number of events fold over and over again. Similarly with actually the band booster club too, that former member Dettinger is a big part of. I saw them meeting actually after the choir concert the other night. So anyway, we have lots of parent volunteers across the district. My experience with that program right now is just again, to be thankful for all of the work that goes into making pretty unique and awesome experiences for our kids. That's all I've got for this evening. So our last item is to adjourn. If I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:45.
Second.
Motion by Doyle, second by Gorman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.